crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the women. 2017, I made a video saying that the Mesolithic people in Western Europe probably had dark skin. I'm a pagan, and I believe in ancestral memories and things in every culture in the whole world throughout history. The idea to identify with your people and with your ancestors. Completely natural. There's nothing evil or sinister about that at all.
You are a YouTube historian, is that a fair thing to say, or just a historian?
I say YouTube historian. I'm certainly an historian, but not in the sense that I work in academia. I don't work in academia. I'm a professional historian in the sense that I make a living from history, and I have a degree in history. But my living is by making YouTube documentaries. So
now we say you're just a historian, but there's a lot of controversy which follows you for many reasons. So I'm just going to ask you straight up a question. Are you racist?
By the definition that most reasonable people would say racism is, which is someone who hates someone for their race, for their ancestry, no.
Good answer. See, now we've got that out of the way. Actually, this is going to be a more difficult question. Is paganism racist?
By that same definition, no.
Right. So, like, let's say, but okay, I understand that a lot of parts of religion in general are actually rooted in our ancestry, I believe, right? But let's say I was an African man, a black man, and I wanted to become a pagan. Although ancestrally I'm not pagan, potentially, I don't know, would that be okay for me to become a pagan?
I would think it would be unwise, because if I was Nigerian, I should have the privilege of experiencing my ancestral customs of the pre-Islamic and pre-Christian traditions of Nigeria, like the worship of Shango and the gods of West Africa. They had their own paganism. Paganism still exists in Nigeria, but it's marginalized under the Islamic and Christian religions, which are dominant, and it's seen as like backward and. So, but it still exists. It's not. It's still right, it's still preserved. So, if I was a man of West African descent, it would make sense if I wanted to understand the divinity in the way that pagans do. The natural way for me to do that would be to investigate and get involved in indigenous West African traditions of religion, and worshipping gods like Shango rather than Thor. Yeah. Shango is very like Thor. They're both strong men, thunder gods, associated with axes or bludgeoning weapons. There's a lot of similarities. I think paganism is the natural religion of mankind all over the world, but what makes it natural is that it doesn't have one universal form. It takes specific forms in different parts of the world among different peoples. So if you wanted to be a pagan and you just said, I think I'll be a Japanese Shinto, but you're not Japanese, you're actually missing a lot of the point of being a pagan, which is to get in touch with your land, your ancestors, and the specific ways of engaging with the divine that your people and people in that region do. So that certain plants and animals take on sacred meanings. If those animals and plants don't live in the part of the world that you're from, then it doesn't really help you connect as well as it would do. And also a big part of paganism is ancestor veneration. And if you're venerating other people's ancestors, and you're missing out on that.
With what you've been doing, you've created a lot of enemies, right?
Oh yeah.
Where do we start with this? I think you could start with the Hindus, for example. They're not a fan of you, I would say, potentially because they have you go against their out of India thing, right? Their theory that life started in India and it went out from there. So that's one of your enemies.
I'll defend some Hindus. I have a lot of Hindu friends, and I love Hinduism, and I love India, and I was always very pro-India and nice about India. But it's just a certain version of what's called Hindutva, a certain ethno-nationalist group within India who insist that scientific discoveries proving the origins of Indo-European languages are all made up nonsense because it doesn't fit their they hate me, but I don't think the average Hindu hates me, or even I've been on Hindu YouTube channels as well as a guest and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm trying to list your enemies.
Yeah,
We've got a
sorry.
long list. Like the Christians, obviously, because Christians don't like pagans. It's simple as that. Although a lot of the modern day Christianity, they don't realize that they actually adopted pagan things like the winter solstice and like all this sort of stuff. You have enemies with other historians don't like you because they would consider what you're doing is a gender driven history, and they would probably say revisionist in some ways.
I think people will say people can say all kinds of things, but whether there's any basis to it is another matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is you've got a lot. You're on the Hope Not Hate website as well.
Oh yes. I can tell you about that. Yeah. Well, that began in 2019, and it was based on they hired a student journalist who had finished his degree. He was trying to make a name for himself, to get a job by doing a little thing for Hope Not Hate. And he did an expose on a group called Generation Identity UK. And I spoke at their event alongside Anne-Marie Waters just after Morrissey had given an endorsement of her. Oh, right. So I was the support speaker for Anne-Marie Waters at this event.
So the far-right leader, Morrissey, has endorsed this person, therefore guilty by association.
She was an anti-jihadi, he was part of that whole anti-jihad movement. Anyway, my speech at that event was just, it's on the internet, it was never a secret speech. It was Hope Not Hate said it was, but it was just me describing the genetic history of Europeans, and no politics really in it. But the boy claimed afterwards that he heard someone in a pub say that I was a terrorist or something, and they published that as if it was a true thing. I took legal action against them.
Really?
And they removed the claim. But like many people tried to repeat it on Reddit. Wikipedia put it, and I began legal proceedings against Wikipedia. They removed it. I've never had any involvement in any terrorism.
Right.
This boy claimed it, and they published it, and then they passed that information on to what's recently been released is that between 2020 and 2021 under Bojo, the counter-terror forces the counter-terror police were advised by Hope Not Hate. And that's the time when, so the year after that, I got harassed by counter-terror police and with my wife and children at the airport on our way back from holiday. And I was like, well, what's this about?
That's crazy.
And they held me for 4 hours for questioning. And I never had anything to do with any terrorist group. It was just some boy in a pub. He hadn't even finished his journalism degree, making something up.
The mad thing about that sort of stuff is like feathers in the wind. Once it's out there, it's like one of those things. How are you going to get it back? It's no matter how many legal proceedings.
It costs a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Like lawfare. I'm just a self-employed guy with a family. It's cost a lot of money for me to go back on that. But a lot of people think Hope Not Hate is a reliable source. They're wrong. It isn't. It uses what teenager says he heard in a pub as a source. That's not proper research. And that they should be taken to task. But the way they're funded and the powerful people behind them, including the Labour Party, Gordon Brown, and also we can see now recently it's just been revealed that Boris Johnson gave taxpayer money to them under the Tories, so they were being state funded during that time when they were harassing me.
Wow.
That was your dollar paying for that, your pound rather. So they have a pretty deep pockets when it comes to lawfare. So it's not an easy thing to take on. But I had to go anyway, and at least they removed the most spurious claims, but not all of them.
So yeah, again, back to your enemies. Okay, so historians a lot of them they're not happy with you and your view of history. I think because one thing you do is sometimes you reveal some inconvenient truths, potentially, which just don't follow the current narrative or something like this.
I think, the main thing that put me in opposition to some of the mainstream commentators within archaeology and history is just the fact that I've taken an interest since 2016 in the improvements in archaeogenetics, which is the science of ancient DNA. We take the DNA from skeletons, old skeletons, and find out stuff about them. Now that existed in the 90s and in the early 2000s, but the general consensus, and that during even the time I was doing my masters, was that it wasn't really reliable. And actually, that was actually true. That it wasn't a reliable science, and there was a lot of questionable things about it. But what they didn't, a lot of people in archaeology and history didn't realize is that there's this thing called the genomic revolution that around 2010, 2015 happened, especially after 2015. The data is much larger, much more reliable, and much more revealing. And the problem of like contamination that would make the data inviolable was basically solved. And since 2015, we've been getting insight into different areas of history around the world and different times of history period that we never thought we would be able to have. And it's all thanks to this amazing science. And all this stuff was being published by reputable Harvard University, the Max Planck Society in Germany. But it's real hard science. But the archaeologists and historians and other people in the humanities, like anthropologists, they were really dragging their heels on it, and they were trying to say that it wasn't reliable, even though it is. And what I was doing was showing how a lot of the dogma of post-1960s anthropology and humanities, particularly archaeology and history, has been completely debunked. Like people would say things like, the Anglo-Saxon never happened, the Anglo-Saxon invasion never happened, the Aryan invasion of India never happened. They like to like cultural diffusion, where the idea that like Celtic languages just spread without any people. Anglo-Saxon English language spread without any people. It was a culture, not a people, and this kind of thing. But what we can see now, because of this new science, is that languages don't just spread by themselves. Like people just don't suddenly all switch from speaking one language to another. That just doesn't happen. And that should be obvious. Like, how did every single person learn their mother tongue from their mother? So, and half of your DNA comes from your mother. So, of course, there's always going to be a correlation between the changes of languages and cultures with changes in DNA. And DNA will always be useful for measuring these things. But the post-war consensus within anthropology was very much opposed to that idea, and they considered it like a hangover from the colonial era. And we've been going since the 60s more and more against that, to the stage when we got about 2015, 2016, where it was like career suicide for anyone in history and archaeology to even talk about things like that. And to the extent that the Indo-Europeans, at the time of my dissertation in 2012, I wanted to compare horse sacrifices in Anglo-Saxon England with some that were happening in India, because and say, look, these have a common origin maybe. And my tutor was like, you can't really talk about Indo-Europeans in that way. That's like pseudoscience. But now it's not pseudoscience, and we know that those horse sacrifices do have their origin in the people who first domesticated horses, the Indo-Europeans, from whom the Indian and English language derive.
Yeah.
So of course there is a connection. And the horse, even though I was just talking about horse sacrifices, that was my starting off point, horse sacrifices in England. But from there, I was like, I need to go further back, because I was like, this traditional horse sacrifice did not come from England. It's ancient, and it's the same tradition that's elsewhere. And like, that's what really got me interested in this ancient DNA stuff, because it was like providing answers to things I'd studied, but was in university, but was being blocked from really looking at properly because of taboos that had emerged within history and anthropology in general.
That was good. It's funny when you go off, you know. But no,
I was too technical there.
No, no, it was a great answer. Great answer. Because I'm trying to think of another example.
Why historians hate me.
Yeah,
I should say also, I know some that secretly, I get contacted by archaeologists and historians who secretly big fans.
Yeah.
And they help me, and they do things to help me.
Because they would lose their job if they did what you did.
Exactly.
But you are just a YouTuber, free reign and make your own money.
That's why. That's partly why, because the academy is extremely, biased, and it's sort of immersed in a particular culture which excludes people who don't belong to it. And I don't belong to it, but I don't need to be part of it, and I don't rely on the academy for my income, so I can't be cancelled from it. But others who are reputable archaeologists and scientists and historians contact me and thank me for my work and say they want to help, but they have to do it in secret.
Right, because previously academics used to own all the information, so you'd have to get into academia to have anything. But now we've got the wealth; everything's open to us to research ourselves. One of the things, again, so another reason, one of the big examples is Cheddar Man.
Yeah,
of course, you've talked about Cheddar Man a lot, so I don't want to bring it up too much.
Yeah,
but Cheddar Man, basically, bones found in Cheddar,
in Somerset,
and then. They remodeled the face, and it was they decided to make the person a very dark-skinned person, basically. But the chances of that are very slim, if to none.
And I was actually one of the first. That all happened in 2018. If you look at my channel, in 2017, I made a video saying that the Mesolithic people in Western Europe probably had dark skin. So some people think I'm denying that. It was like, actually, I was saying before they were saying it.
Right.
I was well aware of the genetic findings because the claim that Cheddar Man had dark skin was made years after it was already made that his race in general, Western hunter-gatherers, would likely have had darker skin. But what was previously made by geneticists with caution, saying the fact that this population lacked the genes associated with lighter complexion in modern Europeans indicates maybe they had darker skin, was taken to an extreme, was saying he definitely had dark skin, and not only that, but it was the darkest possible complexion we could make.
Right, rather than like a Mediterranean-y.
Yeah, I mean, we can't actually reliably say what, because like there's not like the way genes work for skin complexion, it's not like there's one gene that causes light skin and one that causes dark skin. It's polygenic, which means many genes impact complexion. Now, the genes associated with light skin in Europeans are completely absent in modern day Koreans, but do Koreans have black skin?
Okay.
So it's not unreasonable, and that's in a modern population where we can see other genes that impact pigmentation in Koreans. We can't do that with an ancient population where we can't actually see their skin. So it's a lot of guesswork. And the way that they did it was, what I wanted to point out was not so much that Cheddar Man definitely didn't have this kind of skin. I wanted to point out that this was being done for political reasons. And the guy behind it said so in 2017, the year before, when he made a paper, UCL collaborating with the Natural History Museum, where Tom Booth, the guy responsible, said, it's important for geneticists to prevent people from identifying with their ancestors in this way because that feeds into narratives that result in Brexit. He literally used Brexit as an example of why they needed to do this. So this Cheddar Man was a direct reaction to Brexit and not to scientific findings.
So one of the things about Cheddar Man, I don't know if this is kind of like, one of the kind of reasonings behind Cheddar Man is like, and I suppose there was that music video that everyone's talking about not long ago,
Been here from the start.
Yeah. So there's what with all that they're trying to like. One of the things is that what they're doing is they're basically saying, like, if you're an immigrant, now I gotta be careful what I say, but if you're an immigrant that comes to this country, that they want you to feel like you are always here and you are connected to the land. But what they're implying by that is that like this connection to the land is important.
Yeah.
That's what they're implying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind
and
of
belonging to it's very important for immigrant communities, but not for the natives.
Yeah. Which is strange, which is kind of funny. So, but it's important for foreigners to feel connected to the land. But if you are ancestrally from that land in a Western country, like to be connected to the land is seen as a bad thing. You know, it's seen as a nationalist thing.
Ultra nationalist and feeds into white supremacy, and these like buzzwords they use to defame or to try and make or pathologize or demonize what are perfectly natural human behaviors in every culture in the whole world throughout history. The idea to identify with your people and with your ancestors. Completely natural.
Right.
There's nothing evil or sinister about that at all. But there are certain groups who want to specifically target some ethnic groups, namely native European ones, and make them feel that any type of nativism among them is a deranged like pathology that is evil, even like morally corrupt, morally, absolutely reprehensible. And a lot of money is being spent to make people think that. And recently, it's been revealed that a lot of that money was coming from America through US aid. Even BBC received 8% of its budget from American funding until now that Trump has cut that out thanks to the Doge thing. So why was that being done? That's a good question someone should ask. It's not my job to answer that kind of question. I was just pointing out the lies and hypocrisy within the field of like ancient history that are being used to this end, to try and prevent people in England and Britain in general identifying with their ancestors and trying to encourage newly arriving communities of feeling like they have as much tie to this land as the people who have been here for thousands of years.
I this is so it's a funny thing. I don't know if other people feel like, people do feel like this. You'll know, like, if an African American goes back to Africa, sometimes they get this feeling of, oh, this is kind of home, this is where I belong, this is kind of where I. And it's the same with me. I've traveled a lot, and every time I'm in another country for too long of a time, it doesn't feel like I'm connected. It's hard to explain. Like, I couldn't imagine like living in another country. Sometimes when I'm in the Welsh like wetlands it just feels more. It feels like I'm more connected to that sort of being. This is why I think, do you know, like when British people, they go to Spain and they get pissed?
Yes.
And they've got a name for them in Spain, actually. They call them guiris. Guiris, like the idiots like get drunk and like they're sunburnt all over. Guiris.
We should take that name back and be proud of it.
Yeah. So basically, I feel like it's almost like British people are not supposed to be in sunny climates. They're not supposed to be there. You know, that's why they lose their minds, and that's why Australians are in a perpetual state of madness. You know? Australians are not. They're British people that they're in a foreign land. They're not supposed to be there. But I don't know if that's a wild thing to say. But like, I don't know if it's some sort of like a genetic memory or some sort of ancestral nostalgia that's inside me that feels like I should be, you know, shagging sheep in the mountains or something. You know, but that's how it kind of feels sometimes. You know, do you ever feel like that as well yourself? Or?
Yes, I do. This is where I depart from my my colleagues and friends who are very, you know, scientifically minded and things, because I'm a pagan and I believe in ancestral memories and things, and I experienced it in a way that was extremely undeniably like supernatural to me, because I went to Sri Lanka on sort of a holiday. I had a girlfriend. She went there to do aid work for the tsunami relief, and she asked me to come and rescue her because she was having problems there, like she couldn't cope with it. So I went there, and we went for a hike in the mountains, the hill country in central Sri Lanka, and I had the most bizarre sensation that this is like a place I'd been before. And like it was like I'd lived there or something. And then later on I found out that that's where my great-grandfather was born, and that my family lived there for 3 generations in hill country of Sri Lanka and also in India, like back and forth. And I had no knowledge of that. So that was, you know, to me it's like, so it's not just like deep ancestral memories of your homeland. It's also just places that your ancestors might have lived for a while, 100 years ago, because I experienced that. There's no other way to explain it. There's no possible way. I don't just get that when I'm traveling around in the tropics normally. It was
I'm not
bizarre.
a hippy-dippy person myself, but sometimes I get these sort of things. Sometimes I feel like there's a loss of connection to the land. We're losing it in a sense in the modern times. There's a Welsh word actually, hiraeth.
I know it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it means like it's like a homesickness kind of.
Does it mean like longing for a place that you never actually know if it existed?
Yes, kind of like that, and also a place that will always be lost, almost like it's not going to come back. It's like that sort of feeling.
It's a good word.
It's a good word.
Yeah.
Now, when I say a loss of like our land, a lot of people will point that out. They will say, "Oh, you're worried about immigrants taking over the land," and it's not that what I mean when I say this. I got to be careful what I say. It's not that what I mean. What I mean is we're losing our cultural identity in some ways of our old forefathers, almost like our Celtic or pagan roots potentially, and we also put a greater we're putting an emphasis on preserving other people's cultures rather than our own. Like a good example is, and we're almost saying our ancestral culture of paganism and Celtic times was actually shitty. I remember in school, they used to tell me like, oh, the Celts were kind of savages and that's how they kind of portray it. Whereas, you know, when you think of other nations, they're like, oh, they were amazing and all this. It's kind of like one of these things that's the way things are rolling. And it's a shame in some ways, you know?
Yes. Yes, there is. A culture is often understood in modern parlance as something you pay to experience. You go out and have a cultural experience, like you go and eat something cultural or watch a cultural dance, which almost always means someone else's culture. But people fail to, a lot of Europeans in general, but British people, don't understand that culture is what you pass from your parents to your children. That's what culture is. And that role is yours to take. You have to do that. So culture lives in you. You have to keep alive traditions of old, whether it be, you know, tangible stuff like like food or architecture or things like intangible like songs or dances. They're all part of what make you you, and they link you up with the people, the other people who belong to the same culture, who are living and who are dead, and who are yet to be born.
Because it seems like, especially like within Eastern cultures, they honor their dead and remember their ancestors a lot and keep in touch with it. But we don't. Like it's like kind of weird. It's almost like we decided, even like when Christendom came to Britain or whatever, they decided all that stuff is nonsense. You don't do that anymore. I mean, Welsh saints have a lot to answer for. Fucking spread.
Yeah, if it wasn't for them, the Irish probably would have stayed pagan, and if the Irish had stayed pagan, then they wouldn't have sent a mission to Scotland and Northern England, so they would have stayed pagan. And also the last Celtic pagans in Britain, as far as except for the ones in the Hebrides maybe, but the last in Britain mainland were probably here in North Devon, and they were converted by missionaries sailing over from Wales.
So with all this loss of culture potentially, it's difficult for me to say because I don't know. Do you find it demoralising?
I have done at times. I find it sometimes seeing the disparaging comments native English people sometimes make towards aspects of their own culture, such as Morris dancing or like wassailing around here, like people can't be bothered with it, or disparaging comments about their own history. That is sad to think, because I understand the processes that have had to act upon them to make them have such a shameful view of their own people. But I'm overall not demoralised. I'm very happy with the way things are going in terms of I think that a lot of people are looking in the right direction now. They're starting to, and I even wrote an article about this 11 years ago, where I said the phenomenon that was common in 2014 at the time, that would pop culture of having this look back to a fantasy medieval Europe, whether from medieval fantasy or medieval actual dramas, things like back then it was like Skyrim, Game of Thrones, the Vikings series on HBO, and I said what I was trying to say is that these things will definitely still be here in another 10 years from now, and they're not a current trend. They're something that is to stay, and they're a consequence not just of pop cultural trends, but of people in the West feeling that the mainstream philosophy that governs our culture is insufficient. It's not satisfactory, and that they look back to something that they feel has been lost, and they sometimes reach in the wrong direction, into very silly kinds of pop culture products that aren't very good, in my opinion. But the point is that they're reaching for something. There's a reason why they look back to the past for these things, and it's because they intuitively know that we've lost something that we need to regain.
I think there's one of the issues, I suppose, because for example, you've got a pagan community yourself, or what do you call it?
Hearth.
Yeah. People. They see that, and what they see is a group of white people joining together, causing a gang, and then it brings out notes of the Saxon began to hate, and they start to think they get worried. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this active Club England thing that's going on at the moment. Have you heard of this?
No, I don't know about that.
Okay, in London there was a group of people that joined together to do a sports club, but the sports club was far right. And it was almost like a club to defend.
Oh, yes, I recall now.
Yeah.
The former head of terror said that the fact that one of them had bow and arrows meant that they were a threat to the state.
I don't know about that. I think it's quite a new thing, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked too much into it, but it's like there's.
I saw it was an ITV documentary. Yeah, I did see it.
Oh, there's a common thing though, a common trend of I don't know, if you wanted to start some sort of group like that, it would usually get bad press or would be seen badly, and you have to
Yes.
Well, and also, it does attract weirdos. It does attract bad people.
Yes, all things that are unusual attract unusual people. That's natural. Whether that be, in fact, any hobby really. It doesn't. Any kind of hobby. If you go to any hobby, you'll always see a little strange person. It doesn't really matter what the hobby is.
Yeah, Magic the Gathering. You half the people are crazy.
Yeah, that's natural because, I mean, and in English culture, we've traditionally made room for eccentrics. The Germans understand us to be a land of eccentric people.
Yeah. And even every football team and rugby club has their almost little mascot people that they
the local
the water boy, little water boys. You know, yeah.
There's always been local nutters and whatever have you. But anyway, my group, particularly my pagan group, it isn't just men; it's women and children, and we don't do anything except pray. We come together and we make prayers, and we don't allow any kind of, we don't have any publicity, and we're very conscious of the fact that there is this prejudice among the media, and they're trying to attack any group that they see as not part of their club or whatever, their ideological, consensus. So we just try to exclude them, but knowing full well that they would never ever portray us in a good light anyway. So, But we don't exist for the media, we exist for the gods. So we only come together for their sake to pray, and for our own sake, so we can pray for things. That's the reason we do it. It's quite different to a health club where there's a more social focus. Like, it is a religious community, but also there are lots of different religious communities in the UK like that. Pagan ones now, they're popping up, and I think most of them are like us. They don't really have any interest in being public. It's a private matter. Like you shouldn't be making your prayers a public spectacle.
Interesting, yeah. No, I like it. It's like, well, I don't know if there's... Is it growing, the pagan kind of...
paganism is growing. There are many different types of paganism in the UK. I think most of the people who call themselves pagans in the UK aren't really the same as what I am, which is what I call a heathen, which is specifically I worship the English gods or similar to the Viking gods. And I do so in a way that is very much based on the give and receive principle. So we give and we hope to receive. We offer prayers and libations of beer or whatever to the gods and ask them to give us something in return. It's very based on that. Now others are more New Age and they have more kind of, to be frank, made up stuff which isn't historical, and that's fine. That's up to them. But it all gets grouped under one thing. It's called paganism. At the last census in 2021, I think that there were about as many pagans in the UK as there are Hindus, which is not a huge amount. So it's not like a massive political or significant force in the country, but it is a growing thing. And there's also a significant number of people who wouldn't describe themselves as pagan on the census form, but are pagan. I see. And I meet a lot of people like that. So it's hard to know the exact numbers. There's probably a good deal more than 200,000 anyway. But there are, within my hearth, it's definitely growing. It's not getting smaller.
By the way, people might assume that I'm pagan because I'm talking to you about this, but I'm not pagan. That's not how I identify at all. So I just don't know why I'm saying that. Just making sure people know that.
Buddhist, that's why you shaved your head.
Ah, well, Buddhist... and I do have a lot of admiration for Jesus at the moment as well. Like, I still think he's probably the greatest man that ever lived, which is kind of a bold statement. But I can't help but...
You think he was a man?
Yeah, he was the son of God rather than God himself. But I believe that he was a great man and the greatest. And his preachings were just... If everyone just was a Christian, life would be good. Because it's just love. Everyone just love each other. It's not hard. But one of the issues is we live in a might is right universe, and if you are turning the other cheek all the time, you're just going to get fucked up.
You're going to get very red cheeks.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, we're going to move on to a different subject, right? ChatGPT, right? Kind of a strange one, but what I've noticed is since the ChatGPT has come about, there's been an explosion of historic slop on YouTube and really bad content. And it's kind of crazy because you can sometimes watch a video and you can tell that someone's basically gone in ChatGPT, done the research through ChatGPT, and then just either read it out or even got an AI voice to do it. And they're these faceless historians, and you can tell that it's not great. And even people that have been doing history for a long time on YouTube, their content has almost changed almost. It's almost like they used to take months to do a video, and now they're knocking out videos every month, and they think that we can't see it, but I can see it, and I can see the quality's almost gone down,
Yeah, very much. You're absolutely right. You can make a script with ChatGPT without doing the research.
Yeah.
You can, if you're not a great public speaker, you can use AI to make the narration. And if you don't know how to operate a camera and you're not bothered to go and film an archaeological site, you can just generate AI images or even AI video now. So you can have an entirely AI generated video with almost no prior knowledge on the subject, because you can get it all to be done, and without any special skills like how to operate cameras, how to operate, how to do sound recordings, how to balance the sound, and everything like that. You just need a basic ability to edit video, and the consequence is disastrous. That you've got this slop all over the place.
Yeah.
And I obviously know that there is a certain portion of my audience that will not be discriminating enough to value my content over slop.
Yeah.
And I will lose some to the slop. But every YouTuber like me has a decision. You either embrace the slop and go along with the slop, or you try and provide something that is an alternative to slop, in the hope that some people with discriminating tastes will still value it above the hordes of slop that's going to fill the internet now.
Yeah, I see it also as it's a scary view of the future in some ways, because I don't know if you've seen Idiocracy, the film Idiocracy.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. So what we're losing is people actually thinking for themselves. It's like it's exactly what I think you spoke about it before. What June preaches, you were using thinking machines and losing our own minds. People are not actually. Yeah, they're just using machines for everything, and we're kind of losing.
A Butlerian jihad.
Yeah, we need a Butlerian jihad. Exactly that. Yeah.
I mean, I think that AI can be good. There are things I use AI for. For example, when audio I record is no good, AI is very good at removing the wind from the audio. That there might be some wind or something. I don't see that as a problem. I think that's a good thing. It's like in the past I've had windy mic, and people have had to tolerate that wind noise, and now that's not a problem. I don't see any downside to that. But if you're creating something that's like so low quality, and there's a cynicism to it, and also like the reason I do this and not another job is because I enjoy creating. You're someone who creates with his hands. That is presumably one of the reasons you do it is because you actually enjoy doing it. The process of creating something is fulfilling.
Yeah.
And if I'm creating with slop, I would lose that. So it would defeat the point of even being a YouTuber. I might as well get a normal job where I get a pension and all the benefits of having a normal job, like paid holiday time and stuff like that. I wouldn't bother competing with slop. I would just quit. But I actually get a lot of fulfillment from creating, like being creative with my camera, with my editing, with my script writing. And I want to have that freedom to create without other people telling me how to do it, which is a great privilege that I've got this lifestyle, and I'm happy with it. But yeah, I understand that the way that people, the average person is not that discriminating in their tastes, and they're perfectly happy to see slop compared to anything else. And so I will have probably a diminished audience share as the rise of the slop, inevitable AI slop, like the Terminator skull stamping on a foot stamping on a skull.
Right. Yeah.
That represents the future rise of slop, basically, on the internet.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things coming about because of AI, which I for example, I'm a coder. I develop websites and apps in my spare time at the moment because it's not really my job anymore. But I can develop apps which would usually have taken 6 months within a week now, and it's mind blowing.
And they still work just as well.
And it's almost just as well. I actually worked on a project for a company, a real estate company, and it took us about 6 months. A team. I've actually probably recreated that myself at home now within a week, and it's mind blowing.
That's great. I guess.
And I don't have all the knowledge. I just use the ChatGPT, so that's great for that. But like we said before, it's like this loss of knowledge. Rome, right? Rome, the way Rome was built, the way the concrete was made in Rome, and the Romans how they built stuff. That information was once Rome kind of fell, it was kind of lost. No one was building colosseums anymore. People were living in the shadow of these great empires that once were. And that's because throughout history, I feel like knowledge comes and goes, and I feel like we could be on the brink of that again if we, let's say a big EMP blast blasts out all technology. We wouldn't be able to rebuild it because all the people that could have thought of building, I don't know where I'm going with this. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yes,
I guess?
the reliance on technology is a weakness when the technology is not there anymore. I know. It's like if everyone is familiar with like what happens when you. I'm a generation when I used to go to parties and things when I was younger. I didn't have a map on my phone, so I draw a map on like a piece of paper to get to the party or whatever, and then I could just throw it away because having drawn it, that was already in my mind then, so I didn't need it anymore. But now it's like if you get lost and you don't have signal, you're just like you're completely screwed. In the old days, people knew how to. They knew a bit about map reading and orienteering and like just basic things like going to a shop. It's not even like being lost in the woods or something. It's like going to a shop in a city that you're not familiar with. People can't do it unless they've got these apps. Yeah. And the more you rely on an app, the more incapable you are of doing without it. So that's the same with many types of technology. And there's a danger there. So obviously there's something to be said for using technology sparingly. Like if you are capable of doing something without an app and without technology, try to do it that way because it would be good for you. Like a bit of mental arithmetic, for example, it's not necessary now because we have calculators in our pockets all the time. But it has a benefit that not only like one day you might not have your calculator, but it actually helps your brain and it prevents things like senility and Alzheimer's and stuff. The fact that you use your brain, and I think that. A lot of, if you actually look at how like tech elites behave, they know this stuff. Like like the Facebook execs don't let their children use Facebook. Like they know that this stuff is damaging, and like I think like if you're sensible, you'll make use and exploit the technology that's available as far as it can help you, but cautiously and never becoming over reliant on it because you have to use the technology, not be used by the technology.
Because you're anti transhumanism.
I'm against transhumanism.
Yeah.
I'm not against technology.
Right.
I'm not a Luddite. I'm not a primitivist.
Yeah. It's exactly like Dune. Like they have advanced technology in Dune, but they're critical. You have to think for yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind
there's technologies that are good and technologies that are bad, and each technological development needs to be taken on its merits and the threats it poses to the benefit, man. As on a whole.
One of the parts of paganism, I don't know if this is right, let me know if this is right, but with the transhuman aspect of things, death is important, right?
Yes.
Death is honourable, you should die.
Yes.
So one of these transhuman, post-human kind of way of thinking is people trying to live forever through machines or through biotech and stuff like this. Why is death important?
Death is the full stop on a poem. It's at the end of the poem. If a poem doesn't have an end, then it's not a good poem. Like, death makes life poetic. Death makes life have meaning. The scarcity gives value in any marketplace, right? So the fact that life ends makes life valuable. If life never ends, it has far less value. Death is also in paganism specifically the only way you get to join your ancestors and be reborn. So pagans didn't really believe in like permanent death. Like the Celts believed that they all had reincarnation, and that is why Caesar says they fought so hard because they were not worried about being killed. It was no big deal.
Valhalla.
Well, the Celts had something else, but they had this idea of that they'll come back anyway. And the Germanics and Slavs had similar beliefs too, and the Hindus have it to this day, like a belief in reincarnation. So in that sense, yes, like. The idea like you're prolonging the life of this body that you have now doesn't make any sense if you believe in the eternal life of a reincarnating soul, metempsychosis. But it's also a way for you to understand the heroism of life. Like an immortal being can't be a hero in the same way. Like in myths of Greek, if you think about Greek myths, the hero and the god are two different categories of being. The hero is always immortal. He is someone who is like, you can die. And that is what makes bravery and honor and courage mean something. If I run into battle and because I'm immortal, it doesn't have the same meaning. It's like have you ever played a video game on the invincible mode or whatever? It's like it gets boring. Right. It doesn't really have any purpose anymore. The stakes are high, and that's what makes it beautiful.
I'm just gonna bring up something a bit like more goofy, I guess. And you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. I want to simplify it for my simple audience. Sorry, you're not that simple, but some of you are very clever. Okay, We're going to talk about the Yamnaya steppe people. Just for a moment, just quickly. Now tell me if this is a correct statement. Okay. So we had the steppe people of the Yamnaya, and what they did is they smoked weed, they developed a milk intolerance, then they tamed horses. Now with that triple combo, they decided to fuck up the whole world and spread out throughout everywhere and spread their knowledge and what is it called? Is that a true statement?
Yes, with some caveats. I have caveats, but yes, it's basically true.
There we go.
It's sort
Nice,
of true.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, they had there's evidence of cannabis use in their culture and derived cultures. There's certainly by the ironase derivatives, we can tell for certain they were smoking cannabis. We can't tell for certain that they were smoking cannabis earlier on, like at Yamnaya stage. The steppe people who spoke Proto-Indo-European are called by geneticists Western steppe herders, and they're associated with different archaeological cultures. One of those cultures is Yamnaya, which is one of the significant ones.
Yeah.
But Yamnaya isn't a people, it just means pit graves. So that just refers to the period when the Western steppe herders started putting...
I think it's a common thing just to call them the Yamnaya.
It's common to do that, but I just have to clarify that actually horse riding began before the pit graves. So technically it's not... Yamnaya probably definitely continued horse riding and made it better. And then Sintashtar made it even better. But it probably began with Sredni Stog, the first Western steppe herders to ride horses. And there's evidence of weed with them as well. I don't know how important weed was for them because it might just be that they had weed for hemp.
Right.
Like hemp is extremely important for fibres and clothes and things like that. And if they did use cannabis for a drug, it might not be smoked. It might be that because we don't have evidence that they smoked it. There are some braziers that could have been used for smoking, but it wouldn't have been like a joint.
Right.
It would have been like a pot, and then everyone huffs off of that or whatever.
But it is funny, the image of a horse riding, milk drinking, smoking weed kind of Viking travelling around the world kind of fucking up shit.
I mean, actually, I think what more important for them was alcohol, much more important than weed, because in those days, alcohol was not as widely consumed in different cultures around the world. So they were one of the main disseminators of alcohol culture. And most of these cultures, besides Yamnaya, most of the Indo-European cultures describe with names specifically that refer to their beverage containers, like their vessels. So bell beaker culture, corded ware culture, because they buried their dead with these pots that were used for containing alcohol, big pots.
Because even in Germany now, stone is how they drink. Yeah.
Well, these ones were made from earthenware; they were clay pots, but yeah. The point being, though, that their alcohol culture was so important that the noblest dead were buried with the beverage containers. Like it would be like you being buried with a pint glass or something.
It was a few Guinness glasses. Actually, I'll go for that.
This was something more than just a drink. This was something integral to their worldview, and it was associated with the other world and with the journey to the afterlife. Hence, that they had to give them.
So they were like the Irish then.
The Irish are. The Irish are pretty much exactly the same as the first Indo-European settlers of Ireland in the Bronze Age. They're very, very related to them.
We've got to keep an eye on these steppe people, I think, because the Mongols then later on did it. Technically, they're steppe people. They did it again.
Yes.
I mean, they could do it again any time. We've got to be careful about these.
The steppe has been like a kind of a pump of like eastward. At first, it's like westward people spreading into Asia. Then it's Asian people spreading into Europe. And it goes back and forth like this pump one way and the other, spreading people, animals, and diseases.
Diseases.
Yeah, the plague comes across the steppe.
Oh, yeah, good point. Damn. So I want to just now, we're going to kind of finish. I always finish off with 3 questions on these interviews. People don't like it. People think I'm trying to be Joe Rogan or something. Actually, I forgot about...
That's why you shaved your head.
I forgot about something quickly. Due to genetic phenotypes and stuff like this you talk about, right?
Yeah.
This is Erling Haaland. This is kind of what I'm known for.
Yeah,
painting Erling
it's
Haaland.
Beautiful painting.
Thank you. This is one of the... I've painted this over 1,000 times, actually, this very painting. It's kind of a...
When it was in the repeated thing, I thought you'd printed it and done it.
Completely painted them each. It was kind of a... I lost my mind a bit doing it. But what I was going to ask is, what do you think of Erling Haaland's face, right? Because what Erling Haaland has, right? He has pale skin, blonde eyes, blonde hair, blue eyes, and you would go, oh, very much common Norwegian. But then a lot of his features, like he has a plump lips, a large nose, and a big brow.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what would you make of this
Well, the strong brow is definitely an archaic feature associated with populations that have higher amounts of indigenous European hunter-gatherer, such as the Western steppe herders, for example. So they had very strong brows like him. So he could have inherited it from them, or he could have inherited it directly from other hunter-gatherer populations of Northern Europe who they mixed with. So you do see some Northern Europeans with very strong brows, and that's a hangover of what's called an archaic phenotype. I think you can see it in him. Blue eyes also are a trait taken from Mesolithic European hunter-gatherers, some of the indigenous people of Western Europe. So whenever you meet someone with blue eyes, they've got it from those people.
Well, that's just an off note. But it's a funny one though. He does have very plump lips and a large kind of like nose.
This nose, I've seen this nose in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
The thing about skulls is you can't tell. The only thing you can tell from a skull about a nose is how wide it is and what angle the bridge comes out. But everything afterwards is made of cartilage, so that all disappears.
Right. So
we don't know. We don't know about the exact shape of ancient people's noses, only about the width. So, but in looking in modern people, you do notice that there's a certain type of nose. It's rare even in Scandinavia, but his nose is not common in Scandinavia, but it is associated with Scandinavian people. And it might very well be, therefore, that this nose originates in local hunter-gatherer phenotypes.
Oh, well, there we go. That was just an offshoot before I ask the last three questions. So everyone, again, people accuse me of trying to be some sort of Joe Rogan podcast, but I was going to ask you about your paganism bit, but that comes into this because the question is what is the meaning of life?
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the women.
Okay, so is that your answer? Just a Conan reference.
I think that
I think you're going to like this painting, by the way.
Oh, cool. The meaning of life is to live with honor, remember your ancestors, and pass on their legacy to your children.
Okay, the next one. Do you actually believe in God then?
Yeah, my gods are real.
Yeah. Okay. And then, what happens when you die?
Depends how you behaved.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's contingent on your behaviors and
heaven or hell kind of thing, or?
Yes, the words heaven and hell come from Germanic paganism. So there's this formula in both Norse and West Germanic sources where it says up himmel och hell. So hell, up himmel means up heaven, and hell means hell. So the word hell is literally the name for the underworld in Germanic paganism. We call it hell. There's other times like Niflheim and Niflhel in Norse, but more generally, hell is used in all Germanic languages. And that's why Christians speaking Germanic languages call it hell. They just took the old word for what's Hades in Greek. But there's many different halls. You can imagine places where you meet different ancestors, and your ancestors are in some. Where the way you die and the way you live can impact where you go. The ultimate goal is to go to the same hall that your ancestors go to, and to join them and be with them. But if you die in battle, there's one hall called Valhall, which is where Odin takes. There's another called Sesrumnir, which is another one where people die in battle go to. There's another called Snake Hall in Old Anglo-Saxon. That's where people who are evil go, and they will be punished by serpents there. The venom of serpents will torture them. There are all different halls associated with different gods and different peoples, also for different types of death. If you die at sea, you'll go to the hall of Ron and Agir at the bottom of the sea.
So I know this is quite I don't mean to push, but you believe this?
Yes, but I say it in this context. The idea of a hall as the destination of the afterlife is based on the conception of the culture of the Germanic people in the Iron Age, where the center of culture was a hall. And what they're talking about are hubs of confluences of people, energies, the dead. And they would experience that based on
As
their
they know
experience in
it.
life, as they knew it, as a
Right.
hall,
Yeah.
a Viking Age hall or something like this. But we wouldn't experience it like that.
Yeah,
So
I see.
how we'll experience an afterlife, if you go there expecting to see a Viking Age hall and everyone drinking out of horns, you'll be surprised. It'd be
Yeah.
much more familiar. It'll probably look like somewhere you've been in your life. Because just like when you dream, you build up these images based on the things that you've seen. Because even the idea of seeing with eyes is based on the experience of being a living organism with these organs that evolved from like heat-seeking things on a newt or whatever, and then have become this complicated thing we call an eye for seeing. And we obviously don't need those in this other world, which is a completely different dimension of being. But what our way of understanding it now in this life is to use metaphors relative to our contingent form of being. And that means that we'll talk about it in terms of halls.
So it's almost like it's beyond our comprehension, but this is a way of like saying this is how it's the closest you can
Yes.
get to knowing how it was going to be.
And the same with the gods.
I
The
see,
same
I see.
with them too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Nice. That was great. Okay, you ready to see the painting?
I can't wait.
Okay. How do you think I painted you? By the way, I'm going to tell you something actually. So this is what I was going to do, right? This was going to be a super risky thing. I was going to paint you as Cheddar Man. And then I thought, nah, that's going to be a risky one. So what I went for is I kind of went for something that one of the issues you have is your symbolism. People say that your symbolism could be considered racist, but like obviously if you were to look into it and you would see that it's just kind of an old pagan thing, and if anything, again, bloody Hitler adopted these symbols which he shouldn't have, which would go way past before. But anyway, I like your logo, by the way. It's very cool.
Thank you. Ah! That's funny. Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Oh, I love
Do you know what I
it.
mean by the Conan the Barbarian kind of vibe?
Yeah. I think my muscles are a bit bigger in real life, but yeah, it's good. It's very good. Yeah,
mean-
and I love my steed, my trusty steed. That's great.
What do you think this means, this painting?
It
You,
means I've got Thor is blessing this milk with a lightning bolt, and I'm raising it up, and that is the greatest work of art I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, so, like sometimes I do small ones. I kind of got carried away with this. I'm a big fan of the Conan artist. I forgot his name.
Frank Frazetta?
Yes, I'm a big
He's
fan
great,
of his.
yeah.
So that you can see this is kind of Frank Frazetta, kind of. I like his vibe, and it just gives me an excuse to paint something like this. To be honest, you know.
Yeah, you pulled it off. Yeah,
and this is your painting. You can have this now.
I can keep this.
Yeah. Of course.
Wow, that's going to my office.
Yeah. I don't know what you want to do with it. It's not varnished, so you'll have to varnish it yourself.
Okay.
I'm just gonna. And it's solid wood as well.
It's necessary to varnish it to preserve it, then, is it?
Yeah, if you want. It's just you're not going to keep it in sunlight anyway, are you? Really, but
It's a bit sunny in my office.
okay,
I
you
don't
might
know.
have to look into that. But yeah, this is the painting. I'm going to try and show the camera as best as possible. But there we go. You can have that. And
I love it.
what do you think the meaning of it is? Oh yeah. We just said that actually again. But
And then the horse is like, it's all the Yamnaya features. You've got the horse, the milk.
yeah,
You've got the lightning bolt from the thunder god, Perkonas. I've got a Viking era shield. And
I used your symbolism on the shield
my
and
logo,
everything, yeah.
the STJ logo.
Yeah.
Yes, so no one can doubt who it is. Very cool. Very cool.
I was. It does look like you. You think as well?
It looks like my head.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish it looked like me more, but yeah.
Well, there you
go. It's an incentive for me to get back in the gym and start getting swole, so I can match the glory of that painting.
There we go. So should we drink some mead and smoke some weed?
Yeah, I haven't got any on me.